Sorry about that, guys. My recording cuts off at 1 hour, so I had to fire up part 2 of the recording here. But it does look like Aaron was able to get out of the pits a couple of seconds ahead of Rudsy there, so unfortunately Rudsy wasn't able to get the undercut on him. But he was able to make up some pretty significant ground. He's really not far behind at all. Aaron has just gone through Eau Rouge, and Rudsy is making his way towards the exit of it now, so there is potential here that if Rudsy can find some pace, he could potentially be on for P3 here. Salazar is a fairly significant distance ahead of Aaron, and Velokor is a fairly significant distance ahead of Salazar as well, so Velokor is definitely on track for a P1 finish here, and it doesn't look like anyone is going to be able to take that fastest lap from him as well, so at this stage he is going to get that extra 3 points quite comfortably by the looks of it, which I'm sure he will be absolutely stoked about. But Jimmy James tracking in P8 at the moment. He is unfortunately about half a track length behind Pete Man, so not having the greatest race, but again, Jimmy is one of our newer guys. This is his first race with the league this week, so I'm sure he's just learning the ropes at the moment and coming to grips with these Group 3 cars. And it is unfortunate that a couple of the guys this week, with it being that they are the newer guys, had to join in on this race. I think I've said it a couple times now, but I think this race is absolutely the most difficult race in the league due to the conditions of the track. There is only 2 races in the league that are wet weather races, this one being the first, and then there is a race, I think it's week 9 of the league, so 5 weeks away, that's going to be at Tokyo Expressway, and that will also be in the wet. Jimmy James goes very wide there on his way up to the chicane. It does unfortunately receive a penalty for that one, and also goes wide through turn 1 in the chicane. Just a little too late on the brakes there by the looks of it, but hopefully, you know, this is a big learning experience for Jimmy, and hopefully he learns a couple of things from this race and is able to carry them on into the future races. Pete Man has managed to somehow get a 2.5 second penalty, which is very, very significant. I'm not really sure he would have had to cut multiple corners in order to rack up that sort of penalty. But as I said, it is possible that at this stage in the race the tyre wear could potentially be showing signs of the drivers having a bit more difficulty getting around the track, as Pete Man seems to be breaking traction quite a lot. So it is definitely possible that and he just had to serve his penalty there. Again, being that it's on a straight 2.5 second penalty, probably would have cost him about 5 to 7 seconds, I would say. Got Toe Cutter in P6. 55 lap time there, which is nearly 4 seconds slower than his fastest lap, so I would assume that he's either just had a bad lap or he is fuel saving at this stage in the race. And John Citizen, what a race he's had. He's come from way back in last position and a fair way behind, all the way up into P5, and he's only a couple of seconds, I'd say probably 5, maybe 6 seconds behind Rudsy here. So we could be on for a very, very decent battle towards the end of this race here. And Aaron is also only a couple of seconds ahead of Rudsy, so if Rudsy and John can catch Aaron, we could see an epic battle towards the end of this race for P3. Salazar cruising along in P2. Good to see. He's also kept it relatively clean as well. He's pulled a pretty decent lap there as well, 247.5, which is only about half a second slower than the fastest lap. So he's showing good pace at this stage of the race, which is interesting because he did pit on lap 19. So I would assume that at this stage of the race he would be fuel saving, but it would appear that he isn't. At least going off those lap times anyway. Velokor still comfortably in P1 at this stage in the race, and looking like the clear favourite to take pole position at this stage. James has managed to get himself another 1 second penalty. Certainly seems to be struggling at this stage in the race. And he does have the blue flags as well, as Aaron is approaching in order to overtake Jimmy. Breaks traction quite early there into turn 1. Rudsy not far behind Aaron at all now. Hopefully Aaron's able to get by Jimmy relatively cleanly. Jimmy seems to be pretty good at you know, getting out of the way under blue flag conditions, so I don't imagine he's going to have too many issues. John in P5, who's got a 1.5 second penalty. I'd say he's probably picked up that penalty through Eau Rouge. He's probably either cut the corner or ran wide through Eau Rouge there, which is what has landed him that 1.5 second penalty, which he will have to serve at the later stages of this lap. Being that there is only one penalty zone on this track. Toe cutter in P6 currently. As you can see, he's got very clear air both in front and behind him. Yeah, it looks like Velokor has just lapped Peteman 77. And was able to get by him relatively cleanly, which is nice to see. Velokor's only 0.044 off his fastest lap pace at this stage in the race, so it would appear that if he is fuel saving, he is still carrying a lot of speed through these laps. But yes, no, next week's race should be very interesting. Looking forward to uploading and watching the replay of that one. Some of our faster guys should be returning to that race as well, so the battles at the front of the grid will hopefully be much closer. But not only that, the speed that the cars will be hitting will be much higher as well. That's actually the first time I've seen Velokor get a little bit sideways. It wasn't much, he was able to catch it relatively early, but just goes to show how clean and consistent he's been every single lap of this race so far. It does appear that Velokor is pulling away quite significantly from Salazar at this point in the race as well. Salazar has very clear air both in front and behind him at this stage of the race. Like Aaron's been able to get past Jimmy with no real issues, which is great to see. And Rudsy now poaching the back marker Jimmy in order to lap him as well. But this is where most of the action in the race is happening right now, between positions 4, 5 and 6. We've got Rudsy, John and Toe Cutter all within just a couple of seconds of each other at this point in the race. And definitely showing potential. I imagine that at this point of the race, anyone that's close to potentially gaining a position is going to start to push that a little bit harder, as they've only really got about sort of 5.5 laps left in the race. Saying that though, it is so easy to make a mistake, so it's possible that the guys are comfortable in the positions that they're in and they just want to finish the race without making any mistakes. But I'll tell you what, if I was Rudsy, I would be absolutely pushing as hard as I can in order to get that podium. He is only a couple of seconds behind Aaron Thomson. Certainly showing potential of maybe getting that podium. If Aaron is able to finish in P3 this race, that will be his first podium of the league. And it will also be Velokor's first pole position of the league if he is able to finish in P1, which is interesting because he is the leader of the championship at the moment, and he hasn't actually got a pole position. He's finished second, has been his best result in these races. But because he's been so consistent in point scoring, sorry, he has managed to secure the top place in the championship standings for now. Salazar unfortunately did have to miss one race, which put him a fair way behind, but if he can maintain this sort of pace for the rest of the races in the league, then he will close that gap quite dramatically. One person who has been very consistent with point scoring though is Peteman77, who's running towards the back of the grid in this race, but he's actually third in the championship standings in the league at the moment. And that really just comes down to the fact that he has been at every single race and he has scored consistent points in every race. So it just goes to show you don't necessarily need to be a front runner in these races. As long as you show up, score the points, then you're going to have a fairly good result in the championship standings. As we've got John Citizen now about to lap Jimmy James. Hopefully Jimmy just lets him by with no issues. Does seem to be fighting him a little as he pulls over to the side there, and yeah, okay, so Jimmy maybe a little in the wrong here. Should probably be pulling over and letting John through a little easier, but it's alright. He managed to get past with pretty minimal complications there. So, but Jimmy definitely had an opportunity to let him by a little earlier, I think, but that's okay. As John now is chasing down Rudsy for P4, and he's really not far behind at all. He's only about maybe 1.5 to 2 seconds behind. And I imagine that he'll probably make up a bit of that time through this section here, or not, as he breaks traction, loses control of the car, and ends up in the barriers. That is very, very unfortunate. It was looking like John was a very strong contender for P4 there, but making that sort of mistake this late in the race is almost sealed his fate at this point, unless Rudsy makes a mistake as well, but that is very, very unfortunate. I'm sure he's kicking himself about that one. Yeah, it looks like Salazar is approaching Peteman77, who is another back marker, so again, hopefully these back markers understand what it is that they have to do in these situations and just sort of get out of the way of the faster guys and let them by, try not to race them. Tell you what guys, it is a bloody monumental effort doing full race commentary on these types of races. An hour and a half long from start to finish, commenting the entire way. Certainly not an easy thing to do, and I'm relatively new at this sort of thing as well, so hopefully I haven't butchered it too much, haven't bored you guys too much. And back to Velokor now, race leader. Looks like at this stage he's probably about 20 to 25 seconds ahead of Salazar, which is a fairly significant gap. He is approaching Toe Cutter as well, so there's potential that within the last 4 laps of this race Velokor could be lapping Toe Cutter at some point. It is still a fairly significant gap, but see what happens. It looks like John is approaching Jimmy James here. He is going to have to lap him again, unfortunately, as I'm assuming Jimmy passed him when John unfortunately lost control of the car on the last lap. Let's see if Jimmy lets him by here. Yeah, the net coning issues in these lobbies is unfortunately a pretty big problem at the moment. It almost resulted in us delaying our league entirely until they fixed it, but the unfortunate news is that they've not even really addressed it as being an issue, which you can clearly see that it is. So yeah, we just decided, you know, as opposed to delaying the league inevitably without any sort of date, we were just going to run it. And yeah, our guys are pretty good at sort of, you know, accommodating for the amount of lag and trying to give extra room where it's needed. But yeah, hopefully sometime in the near future, the developers of the game acknowledge that it is an issue and they are able to fix it. As these sorts of issues weren't really prevalent in GT Sport, which is interesting that, you know, in the later gen game, we have these sorts of problems. You'd think they would have just carried over whatever formula they were using from GT Sport, but apparently not. We've got Pete Man in 7th place, who appears to have been lapped by Salazar just recently. Have a go at these weather conditions though. It really makes following these cars pretty hard to do, especially following closely. The amount of spray coming off the back of the cars is really a lot. You can almost not even see anything. Cutter in P6 currently. John Citizen in P5. Rudsy in P4. Aaron in P3, who has seems to have put much more of a gap between himself and Rudsy. I recall Rudsy being relatively close to Aaron at some point, but Aaron seems to have put a lot of pace out of the bag and just absolutely gapped him over these past couple of laps. We've got Salazar in P2 and Velokor in P1. Again, just so consistent, so clean every single lap. And it looks like Jimmy James is in the pits again, so he is opting for that 3-stop strategy. Which at this point in the race, I don't think he was really going to catch any of the positions ahead of him, so it's not really costing him too much. But yeah, I think this is definitely a learning opportunity for Jimmy. To potentially think about his fuel strategy a little more in the future races. Velokor now just coming out of the exit of Eau Rouge onto the straight leading up to the chicane. Let's see what gear Velokor gets up to. I'm in the 5th gear, so it would appear that he may be fuel saving in the later laps of the race. Which wouldn't surprise me in the least, as he is on what would appear to be a 2-stop strategy at this stage. Follow Aaron for a bit, and as he comes across the start finish line, we'll go for an onboard lap with him. See what it's like to drive the McLaren around a lap of Spa in these sorts of conditions. And we approach the end of lap 28 with our onboard lap with Aaron now. Very clean lap, nice and consistent, very minimal mistakes. It's good to see. As we approach near the end of this race now, only 2 more laps to go. Velokor still has quite a commanding lead, very minimal mistakes. He does appear to have lapped Toe Cutter in this lap as well, so Toe Cutter currently running in P6. And he has had a pretty fantastic race as well. I don't think he's made too many mistakes, which is interesting that John is ahead of him. John has made a few mistakes this race, but obviously his pace over Toe Cutter has just sort of allowed him to stay ahead. We've got Pete Man in P7 and Jimmy James still running in P8, which is last position at the moment. As I said earlier, we did have 9 people in this race. Unfortunately, Vital Billy disconnected. So if you are watching this replay, Vital, it's very, very unfortunate that you weren't able to hang around for the duration of the race, mate. And it's very unfortunate that you will miss out on the points for this one. But there's still plenty of races to go. This is only week 4 in what will be a 12-week league. So lots of opportunities to score points in the future. The last race of this league as well, week 12, is going to be an endurance race around Mount Panorama. So it'll be a 60-lap race, starting early in the morning and finishing at night time in game time, which will be a very, very interesting race. Salazar actually does show extreme pace around Mount Panorama, so he will give the guys a run for their money for sure. It'll be a very, very interesting race as Velokor comes up to about halfway through his last lap now. And again, just an absolute masterclass. So clean, absolutely no mistakes. Great fuel strategy, great pace. The beautiful drive from start to finish. He was able to get a very, very good start off the start line, and out of turn 1 was able to avoid all of the chaos, all of the rubbing and nudging, and was able to get through the corner very clean. And at the end of lap 1, he had about a 4-second gap over the rest of the grid, and he's just consistently built on that every single lap. He's got about a 40-second gap between himself and Salazar at this stage in the race, so he has confidently and comfortably just ran away with this one, really in a class of his own. And it'll be interesting to see which cars the grid choose to drive at Mons next week. As I said, it is a bit more of a high-speed track, so won't be opting for as much downforce, won't be opting for as much corner speed, I would assume. So I imagine that a lot of the drivers will likely be in different cars. As Rudsy actually goes into the pits on lap 29, so I'd say that he was probably opting for a 2-stop strategy, but wasn't quite able to make it, which is very unfortunate. That could potentially cost him a position and allow John to overtake him right at the end of the race, and he's done it. So the late pit stop by Rudsy has cost him P4, which is very, very unfortunate. I don't think Toe Cutter managed to get him. You know what, he actually might. He's coming up to the last chicane here, as Velokor has crossed the finish line right now. And he's managed to set the fastest lap on the last lap of the race with a 2:46.6. So Velokor scoring 50 points for this round with the additional 3 points for fastest lap, and that is just an absolute masterclass. Beautiful drive by Velokor. Salazar takes P2, Aaron Thomson P3, Rudsy in P4, John in P5, and Toe Cutter in P6. Pete Man taking P7, and Jimmy James take out P8 for this race at this stage. It looks like Pete Man's actually going to lap Jimmy James on the last lap here, so Jimmy obviously not having a good race at all, getting lapped by the entire field. If you are watching this, Jimmy, I'm sorry, mate. But practice makes perfect, mate. Just keep at it and you'll be keeping up with the rest of the grid in no time, buddy. Aaron making his way around now for his final lap. And I think overall it's been a really good race by almost everyone in the field, really. Everyone's managed to keep it pretty clean. We did expect a couple of mistakes. In fact, I expected a lot more mistakes than what I've seen in this race. Driving in these conditions is absolutely treacherous. It is by no means an easy thing to do. So props to everyone that attended this race, guys. Really, really well done, especially Velokor and Salazar. I don't think I saw you guys make a single mistake all race, so really in a class of their own. Excellent job. As Aaron comes up to the last chicane now. And he is across the finish line to take P3. Great race by Aaron. Well done. And that is his first podium at the league as well, so congratulations, mate. Got Rudsy about halfway through his final lap now. And John in P5. I don't think these guys are actually going to make it to the end of the race. I think the race timer is going to cut out. I could be wrong. Rudsy now coming up to the last chicane. I'm not sure why there's yellow flags flying in this sector. There's no other cars in the sector, so I'm not really sure what the yellow flags are about, but oh well. Rudsy crosses the finish line now to take P4. Great race, Rudsy. Well done, mate. And John coming through the last chicane now, and he will take P5. And that is it. 30 laps, torrential rain around Spa. Well done to the grid. I will post the championship standings in the video description for the rest of you to check out. And as I said, if you guys are interested in competing in the league, feel free to comment or message me on PlayStation. And yeah, we'll see you next week at Monster. Thanks, guys.